wake up one day and it hits you. Not like a slow creeping realization. No, this is a brick to the face, a car crash in your mind. You've been played. Not just by the government, not just by corporations or algorithms or the soft, smiling faces of people selling you things you don't need. No. The real con job, the real masterstroke of manipulation, the real architect of this maze that you're trapped inside is you. You, sitting there in your own head, spinning the same old narratives, reinforcing the same old lies, worshipping the same tired illusions. You, carefully laying down brick after brick in the walls of your own personal prison. You designed this place, you built it. And now you're pacing back and forth wondering why the fucking doors are locked. The walls are your habits. The ceiling is your belief system. The floor, that's your past, unquestioned, unchallenged, permanent. And so here we are, just you, me, and the blueprint of your own bullshit. Because that's what we're doing today. We're going to tear this thing apart. Take a sledgehammer to the foundation, rip the drywall off and see where the rot is. Every learned behavior, every unquestioned assumption, every story you've told yourself to keep things easy, predictable, and comfortable, they're going to be gone. This is not self-help. Self-help is just redecorating the prison. Fresh coat of paint on the same old shit. A new motivational quote slapped over a hole in the ceiling where the rain keeps coming in. That is not what we're doing here. We are talking demolition, complete collapse. We're talking about breaking apart the architecture of your own self-sabotage. How we got here, how we keep ourselves stuck, and more importantly, how the fuck we claw our way out of it. No life hacks, no easy solutions, no 5 simple steps or some bullshit course that I'll sell you at the end. Because the truth is that if you want to unfuck yourself, you need to be willing to watch the whole thing burn. So welcome to the Observing Eye. Now go get yourself a match. The best prisons are the ones where the prisoners don't even know they're locked up. The ones where the rules are so deeply wired into their brains that they don't even try to escape. They don't even think about escape. Your job, your beliefs, your personality, the way you react to criticism, the way you think about success, failure, money, love, none of that is yours. Not really. You inherited it, passed down to you like an old, worn-out script. A script written by other people long before you ever got here. Your family, your culture, your school, your government, your media, every single one of them is a bricklayer in this invisible prison. And the real fucker is that you helped to build it. Piece by piece, you reinforced the structure every time you followed a rule without questioning it. Every time you played a role instead of being a person. Every time you let fear, guilt, or obligation make your choices for you. Because that is how the system works. That is how the architecture of control stays standing. It is not about locking you up. It is about making you police yourself. Now let's get one thing clear. You didn't wake up one day and decide who you are. You think that you did. You think that you made choices, but the truth is that most of those choices were just preloaded options on a menu that you didn't even design. The language you speak, the gods you worship or don't, your ideas of right and wrong, your understanding of success, what's normal, what's weird, what's good and what's bad. You didn't invent those things. They were handed to you. And sure, maybe later on you modified them, you painted over them, dressed them up in fancy clothes, personalized them a little, but the foundation, the core structure of how you see the world, that was built before you even knew what a you was. Free will is a great sales pitch. It keeps the machine running. It keeps people invested in the illusion that they are in control. But in reality, most people are just playing out scripts, acting out roles they never even questioned. You're told to get a job, get married, have kids, save for retirement, work until your body breaks down, and then die quietly and hope the government doesn't lose your pension. And if you don't follow the program, you're a failure, a disappointment, a cautionary tale. Doesn't matter if you're miserable, doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense, because that's not the point. The point is obedience. And the best way to control people is to make them think they came up with it all themselves. We talked about the panopticon last week, a big circular prison with a tower in the middle. One guard in that tower can see every prisoner, but the trick is that the prisoners can't see the guard. They don't know when they're being watched, so what do? They police themselves. They act like they're being watched all the time, even if no one's actually looking, because the possibility of being watched is enough. The fear is enough. Now apply that to society. Social media, surveillance cameras, credit scores, background checks, the way every single thing you do or say online is logged, stored and analysed. But it's deeper than that. The real prison isn't the cameras or the government, it's inside of you. It's the voice in your head that says, don't say that, don't do that, that's not normal, that's not appropriate, that's not allowed. It's the reason you dress a certain way, the reason you hold back from telling the truth, the reason you're afraid to quit the job you hate, end the relationship that's killing you, or chase the thing you actually want, because you've been trained to fear consequences that may not even exist. You live in a psychological panopticon, a self-maintaining prison, and you built it for yourself just like the rest of us. The best part is that they don't just make you build your own prison, they make you pay for it. Because capitalism isn't just an economic system, it's a psychological one. It works because it exploits the architecture of human suffering. Step 1, convince you that you're broken. Step 2, sell you things that promise to fix it. And step 3, make sure those things never actually fix anything, just keep you coming back for more. You'll never be rich enough, fit enough, young enough, successful enough. There will always be a new product, a new goal, a new standard you have to chase. Because if you ever actually felt whole, if you ever stopped feeling like you needed something, the system would collapse. So they keep you hungry, keep you insecure, keep you comparing yourself to other people. They sell you dreams, lifestyles, and identities. They make sure you're never quite satisfied. And the real joke is that even the things that are supposed to help you are part of the trap too. Self-help books, meditation apps, therapy podcasts, they all sell the same dream. You're not okay, but if you just follow these steps, buy this program and adopt this new mindset, then maybe you'll be happy. And so the prison gets bigger, more elaborate, more sophisticated. Because this isn't about keeping you inside, it's making sure you never want to leave. So now what? Now that you see the walls, now that you see the bars, now you have a choice. Most people, when they get to this point, they look away. They tell themselves it's not that bad, that they don't really feel trapped, that maybe this is just how life is supposed to be. Because the alternative is terrifying. Because if you accept that your entire reality has been shaped by forces outside of your control, if you accept that the life you're living isn't really yours, then what? What happens when you admit the prison is real? Well, you either break out, or you go back to sleep. A lot of us go back to sleep. Steak tastes good whether we're awake or not, right? But if you're still here, still listening, still awake, then congratulations. You've seen the cage. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that means, maybe for the first time in your life, you can start figuring out how to tear it down. Here's a fun little experiment. Take a person, give them two pieces of information that completely contradict each other. Make sure that both things are true. Make sure they know that both things are true, then watch what happens. They'll squirm, they'll deflect, they'll twist themselves into knots trying to reconcile the irreconcilable, and if they can't, they'll do what every human being on the planet has been programmed to do since birth. They'll lie to themselves. Because reality, when it doesn't fit our pre-existing beliefs, is just too fucking uncomfortable. This is cognitive dissonance, and it is the engine of self-delusion. The thing about being human is that we don't really want the truth. We want the version of the truth that doesn't make us look stupid. The version that doesn't force us to admit that we've been wrong. The version that doesn't shake the foundation of the stories we've built our whole identity around. Because if you admit one fundamental truth that contradicts your belief system, then the whole thing starts to unravel. One loose thread, and suddenly you're standing there holding a pile of fabric, wondering why you ever thought it was a sweater. Take smoking. You get a guy who smokes 2 packs a day. He knows smoking kills people. He's seen the warnings, seen those hideous photographs on the packets. His own uncle probably died of lung cancer. So how does he live with that contradiction? Well, it's easy. He tells himself a better lie. My grandpa smoked until he was 90. You gotta die of something. I don't even inhale that much. That's cognitive dissonance at work. When the truth is too painful, we rewrite the narrative. We invent justifications. We tell ourselves stories that let us keep doing what we were going to do anyway. And this, of course, isn't just about cigarettes. This is about everything. The job that we hate but convince ourselves is stable. The relationship we should have left years ago but tell ourselves is just going through a rough patch. The beliefs we inherited but never questioned because doing so would mean admitting we never thought for ourselves. This is why people defend the systems that oppress them. This is why people double down on bad decisions instead of cutting their losses. This is why, even when confronted with undeniable evidence, most people will cling to their beliefs harder instead of letting go. Because the alternative is admitting they were wrong, and for most people, that is worse than death. Imagine being kidnapped, locked in a basement, held against your will. There's going to be some dark analogies this episode. And then just warning you, and then somewhere along the way, you start making excuses for your captor. Well, they're not that bad. They feed me. I probably deserve this. That's called Stockholm Syndrome. And we do it with everything. We do it with capitalism. We do it with religion. We do it with relationships. And we do it with our own trauma. We get so used to our chains that we start polishing them. We get so used to the cage that we convince ourselves it's a home. You ever hear someone defend the system that is actively screwing them over? You tell them, hey, maybe working 60 hours a week just to afford rent isn't normal. And they'll say, well, that's just how the world works. You tell them, hey, maybe billionaires shouldn't exist while people starve. And they'll say, well, they worked hard for it. You tell them, hey, maybe this whole thing is designed to keep you exhausted, distracted, and powerless. And they'll say, well, what are you going to do? That's life. That's psychological captivity. That's a belief system so deeply ingrained that they don't even see it anymore. We talk a lot about external prisons, the societal structures that keep us trapped, but what about the internal ones? Because those are the real killers. The stories you tell yourself about who you are, what you're capable of, what you deserve, those are the real architects of your suffering. You tell yourself you're not smart enough to change careers. You tell yourself you're too old to start over. You tell yourself you're not worthy of love, not talented enough to create, not brave enough to leave. And if you tell yourself something enough times, it becomes reality. Not because it's true, but because you've designed your world around it. And the worst part is that you will fight to protect the very lies that are keeping you stuck. Because to admit their lies means admitting that you've wasted years, maybe decades, living inside a delusion. You ever notice how people will go out of their way to find information that supports what they already believe? That's confirmation bias. It's why conspiracy theorists only listen to people who agree with them. It's why political debates never change anyone's mind. It's why someone can Google "is coffee good for you" and find a dozen articles that say yes and another dozen that say no, and they'll only believe the ones that tell them what they wanted to hear in the first place. Then there's the sunk cost fallacy. The idea that if you've already invested time, money, or effort into something, you have to keep going, even if it's obviously a dead end. It's why people stay in failing relationships. It's why gamblers keep betting after losing all night. It's why people stay at jobs they hate for 30 years, convincing themselves they're almost there instead of admitting they've wasted 3 decades. And then, of course, there's status quo bias. The idea that it's safer to stay the same than to change, even if the same is making you miserable. Because change means risk. Change means uncertainty. Change means admitting that everything you thought was solid might actually be quicksand. And so we stay, we rationalize, we tell ourselves that things aren't that bad. Because even if we're suffering, at least we know what to expect. Now here's the real question. If self-delusion is the architecture of our suffering, if cognitive dissonance is the glue that holds our worst beliefs in place, then how the hell do we start breaking it down? Step 1 is radical self-honesty. No sugarcoating, no justifications, no buts, just cold, brutal truth. You're not stuck, you're afraid. You're not too old, you're comfortable. You're not a victim of circumstances, you're avoiding responsibility. Step 2. Question every story you've ever told yourself. Where does this belief come from? Who benefits from me believing this? What happens if I let go of it? Step 3. Get comfortable with discomfort. Cognitive dissonance is painful. It's supposed to be. It's the feeling of your old self dying, and death is never easy. But if you can sit with it, if you can face the contradiction instead of running from it, that's how you start pulling down the walls. Because the thing about self-delusion is it only works if you don't look at it too closely. And once you see it, really see it, you can't unsee it. And that is the first step to unfucking yourself. Have you ever seen an elephant in chains? Not a full-grown 10,000-pound wrecking machine. I mean when they're young. Trainers take a baby elephant, tie a chain around its leg and anchor it to a stake in the ground. The elephant pulls and struggles and fights, but the chain holds. No matter how hard it tries, it can't break free. And then something happens. It stops trying. It learns that the chain is stronger, that escape is impossible. And that belief stays buried in its brain even as it grows into a monster capable of uprooting trees. That chain, it's a joke. A full-grown elephant could snap it like dental floss, but it won't. Because in its head, that chain is unbreakable. That's learned helplessness. And if that story doesn't punch you in the gut, it should, because we're all that elephant. We've all been trained to believe that certain things are impossible, that we are powerless, that there's no point in trying. And that's exactly how the system keeps us docile. Not by forcing us into cages, but by convincing us that we can't leave. You've heard of the frog in boiling water before. You don't throw a frog into boiling water, it'll jump out. But if you put it in cold water and slowly turn up the heat, it won't notice. It'll sit there getting used to each new temperature until it's cooked alive. That is how learned helplessness works. Not all at once, not with a single traumatic event, but through slow, repeated exposure to failure, disappointment, and limitation. You try something once, you fail. You try again, you fail. You get rejected, you get humiliated. Eventually, you stop trying. And once you stop trying, the people in power don't need chains, they don't need bars, they don't need force, because now you're policing yourself. You're keeping yourself small, you're staying in your lane, you're telling yourself this is just how life is. And when someone tells you otherwise, when someone shows you a door, when someone points to the chain on your leg and says, you know that thing isn't even locked, right? You don't believe them, because you stopped believing escape was possible a long time ago. Most people don't change because they think it'll be too painful, too risky. But the thing is that you're already in pain. You hate your job, your relationship is suffocating, you feel stuck in your own skin. But because it's familiar pain, you put up with it, because at least it's predictable. It's the devil you know. And so you stay, you settle, you tell yourself, maybe this is just how life is. But imagine this. You're in a room, the walls are slowly closing in. Every day they squeeze a little tighter. It's uncomfortable but not unbearable. You adapt, you get used to it. But eventually those walls will crush you. That's what staying in the wrong job, the wrong mindset, the wrong life does to you. It doesn't break you all at once, it erodes you. A slow, gradual destruction, one you barely even notice. But leaving, changing, that feels like stepping into fire. That feels like taking a sledgehammer to those walls, even if it means getting cut on the debris. So most people don't. Most people wait until they're suffocating, until they have no other choice, until the suffering is so unbearable that staying becomes worse than leaving. And that's the tragedy. Because you don't have to wait until you're broken to fix things. You just have to accept that discomfort is the price of freedom. Now, if you want to talk about real helplessness, we can talk about Viktor Frankl. Frankl was a psychiatrist. He survived the Holocaust, watched his family get taken, saw death every single day. And in the middle of all that horror, all of that suffering, he realized something. Even when you have no control over your situation, you still have control over how you interpret it. You can give suffering meaning. You can choose how you respond. And that's how he survived. That's how anyone survives something truly horrific, by refusing to surrender their mind even when everything else is taken from them. Compare that to most people today who have every option in the world and still act like they're trapped. Because that's the real prison. Not the world, not the circumstance, your mind. Freedom is terrifying, and that's the truth. Because once you admit you can change, once you admit you aren't truly stuck, then suddenly you're responsible for your own suffering. That's a hard pill to swallow. It's easier to say I can't, easier to say it's too late, easier to blame circumstances, other people, society, and everything else. And of course, some of that is real, some of it is stacked against you. But so what? Does knowing the game is rigged mean you stop playing? No. It means you play smarter, it means you adapt, it means you find a way to win anyway. Because the alternative, sitting in your cage, shaking your head, telling yourself, well, I guess this is just life, that's not life, that's surrender. Let's talk about addiction. Not the kind that comes in bottles or needles, not the kind that ruins your liver or makes your teeth fall out like Cracky Annie over in the corner there. The kind that feels productive, the kind that makes you feel like you're doing something with your life. The kind that keeps you buying, consuming and chasing but never actually changing. I'm talking about self-improvement. Because the self-improvement industry isn't designed to fix you, it's designed to keep you broken. You ever notice how self-help books all say the same thing? How every podcast, every TED Talk, every online course is just a remix of the same ideas packaged in a slightly different way? That's not an accident, that's the business model. Because real transformation is bad for business. If a book actually fixed your problems, if a course actually made you confident, if a program actually made you disciplined, you wouldn't need another one, and that would kill the industry. So instead they sell you the illusion of progress, the feeling of progress. They keep you on the treadmill chasing the next book, the next seminar, the next guru, always believing that you're one step away from finally having your shit together. And that's how they get you. Because as long as you think you're improving, you don't realize you're just going in circles. Somewhere along the way, personal growth stopped being about becoming better and started being about becoming more efficient. We don't even talk about happiness anymore, we talk about optimization. Wake up at 4:30 a.m, cold shower, bulletproof coffee, hustle culture, passive income, meditate like a monk and grind like a machine. The goal isn't to be fulfilled, the goal is to be a more productive worker. And so now even your self-improvement is just another form of labor, another way to increase your market value, another way to squeeze more out of yourself so you can keep feeding the system that's making you miserable in the first place. The real trick is that the self-improvement industry isn't just selling you solutions, they're selling you problems. Because first, they have to convince you that you're not good enough, that you're behind, that you need to fix yourself. And once you believe that, once you accept the idea that you're a broken thing that needs constant upgrading, they own you. Because you will never be enough, not according to them. There will always be a new habit to master, a new technique to learn, a new standard to reach, a new guru whispering, "You're so close, just buy this one last thing." And so you keep chasing. Because self-improvement, when it becomes an industry, stops being about self and starts being about sales. And then there's the positivity cult. The people who tell you to just be grateful, to manifest abundance, to think positive and everything will change. You know what that is? That's emotional gaslighting. That's a way to shut down real emotions and keep people quiet. Because if you can convince someone that their problems are their own fault, if you can tell them that they're unhappy just because they aren't thinking the right thoughts, then you never have to change the actual systems that are fucking them over. You don't have to fix inequality, you don't have to deal with trauma, you don't have to address real suffering. Just tell people to vibrate higher and sell them a fucking crystal. There's a difference between changing your life and just making it look like you have. Most self-improvement is about aesthetics. It's about looking like someone who has their life together. It's about buying the right notebooks, downloading the right apps, dressing the right way, and posting inspirational quotes on Instagram pretending that you're elevating. But real change doesn't look good. It's ugly, it's messy, it's painful, it's tearing yourself apart and putting yourself back together again. It's losing people, It's being uncomfortable. It's feeling like you're dying because in a way you are. You're killing the old you. And that doesn't fit in an Instagram post. That doesn't sell books. That doesn't get sponsorship deals. So instead they sell you the illusion of transformation. They sell you the aesthetic of success without the actual discomfort of becoming something new. Nobody's going to tell you when you're ready. You're never going to feel ready. So stop waiting. Start moving. Start now. Because the biggest lie the self-improvement industry ever sold you is that you're not already enough. That you need someone else's program to become who you were meant to be. But you don't. You just need to stop playing the game. Because the truth is, you were never broken. You just live in a world that profits from making you think you are. You ever see a house being demolished? Not some gentle remodel on like BBC Two, not like a little home improvement project. I mean total destruction. Wrecking balls, explosives, guys in high-vis jackets, dust and debris flying in every direction. And for a while it looks like chaos, but that's the only way you clear space for something new. That's what we're doing here. That's what this whole thing has been about. Because if you've made it this far, if you've stared into the abyss of your own bullshit and haven't run screaming back into the comfort of distraction, then congratulations. You are ready for demolition. You're ready to tear down the structure you've been living in. Because the old framework, the old belief system, the mental architecture that's been keeping you trapped, that thing has to go. This is where most people get stuck. They want change, they want a new life, they want freedom. But they don't want to admit that the version of themselves they've been protecting for years is built on lies. Lies about who they are, lies about what they're capable of, and lies about what they need, what they want, and what they believe. Because it's not just about letting go of bad habits. It's about realizing that the person you've thought you were isn't real. That person is a product of conditioning, a sum total of fears, defenses, excuses, and outdated programming. And once you accept that, once you truly see it, you don't get to keep pretending. Because it means that everything you've built your identity on, the stories, the rules, the roles, the excuses, are up for debate. That is the cost of freedom. You don't get to keep the old life and have a new one. You don't get to improve your way out of the cage. You have to tear it down. We love to collect information, new facts, new perspectives, new ways of thinking. But real transformation isn't about learning more. It's about unlearning everything that isn't true. It's about breaking dependencies. Dependencies on external validation, that need for approval, for permission, for someone to tell you, yes, you're doing it right. That dependency on identity, the idea that who you've been up to this point is who you have to be forever. And that dependency on certainty, the need to have all the answers before you act instead of stepping into the unknown and figuring it out as you go. Because these dependencies, they're reinforcing the old structure, and you can't build something new if you're still clinging to the old foundation. Most people try to fix their lives by adding things, new habits, new routines, new philosophies, new goals. But sometimes the real answer isn't more, it's less. Minimalism isn't just about getting rid of physical clutter, it's about decluttering your mind. What belief can you drop? What obligation can you walk away from? What person, what habit, what identity is no longer serving you? Because sometimes the simplest way to unfuck yourself isn't by doing more, it's by stopping the shit that's making you miserable. Now, most people probably won't make it past this point because this is the part that actually hurts. This is where you stop reading, stop planning, stop talking about change, and actually start letting go of the things that are keeping you trapped. Most people would rather stay in a comfortable lie than face the discomfort of tearing it down. They'd rather complain about being stuck than do the painful work of breaking free. Because the truth that none of us want to recognize is that the cage has been unlocked the entire time. It's been unlocked for years. You've just been too afraid to walk out. Because walking out means leaving behind the safety of the old structure. It means stepping into the unknown, naked and vulnerable with no guarantees. Most people aren't willing to do that. You ever quit something that wasn't good for you? A job, a relationship, a belief system, and then feel completely lost? Like, shit, what do I do now? That's because when you let go of something that's been controlling you for years, it creates a void, a gap where the old structure used to be. And we hate voids. So what do? We panic, We scramble to fill it with something new, even if that something is just as toxic as what we left behind. This is why people bounce from one bad relationship to another, why they quit one soul-crushing job just to take the same, why they abandon one belief system and immediately latch onto another just as rigid and dogmatic, because they're afraid of the in-between. They're afraid of sitting in the wreckage, of being in that liminal space between who they were and who they're becoming. But that space is where real transformation happens. That's where you rebuild. Most people get this part backward. They want to start building before they've burned anything down. They want the new life, but they don't want to let go of the old one. They want to change, but they don't want to feel lost while they do it. And that's why they fail. Because before you build, you have to clear the ground. That means burning. That means letting go. That means standing in the rubble of your old self, resisting the urge to rebuild immediately and sitting with the discomfort of not knowing what comes next. And if you can do that, if you can survive the destruction, then you'll finally have the space to build something that actually matters. Alright. The old structure is gone. The wreckage is still smouldering. The beliefs, the habits, the excuses, you set fire to them, you fucking arsonist, and now you're standing in the ashes. This is the part where most people panic. They want to run back, grab whatever pieces of the past are still intact and start stacking them up again, even if those pieces were the very thing that kept them trapped. But this right here, this emptiness, this nothingness, this is freedom. For the first time in your life, you're not following a blueprint that someone gave you. This time, you get to design your own structure. So let's talk about how to build a life that isn't just another cage. Step 1. Accept that no one is coming to save you. Most people, even after tearing down the old system, are still waiting for someone or something to guide them. They want a new authority, a new structure, a new set of rules. Because thinking for yourself, that's work. It's so much easier to follow someone else's system, to grab the latest self-improvement framework, the newest ideology, the next ultimate guide to life and just plug yourself into it. And if you do that, you might feel stable again, you might feel secure, but you won't be free. Because freedom means responsibility. It means you have to decide what matters. You have to decide what's true. You have to build a life without waiting for permission. And a lot of people don't want that. A lot of people want a new set of chains that feel different from the old ones. So if you really want to be free, if you really want to build something better, you have to stop looking for someone else to tell you how. Step 2. Start from first principles. You know how scientists break down complicated problems? They don't just look at what other people have done before. They take a problem and break it down to its fundamental truths, the core of what's real, and then rebuild from there. It's called first principles thinking. And if you want to build a new framework for your life, you need to stop accepting things as given and start questioning everything. Why do I think success means money? Why do I believe relationships work a certain way? Why do I assume I have to work a job I hate for 40 years? Why do I think I need external validation? Where did these ideas come from? Who benefits from me believing them? What happens if I let them go? Strip it all down. Get to the root of what's real. Then build from there. Step 3. Prioritize what's real, not what's marketed to you. So I'm sure you've noticed how every part of modern life is designed to distract you. Your phone, social media, news cycles, advertisements. Every screen you look at is selling you something, an idea, a product, a lifestyle. And if you're not careful, you'll build your entire life chasing things that don't actually matter. Status, prestige, approval, stuff. So before you start constructing your new framework, ask yourself, what's real? Is it money? No, because money only matters in relation to what it can do for you. Is it validation? No, because you'll never control what other people think of you. Is it external success? No, because external success is always measured by someone else's yardstick. What's real is what you actually experience. Time, presence, freedom, connection, creating things that matter to you, and doing things that make you feel alive. That's the foundation. If what you're building doesn't align with that, fuck it off and start again. Step 4. Develop a philosophy, not just a set of goals. Talk a lot about philosophy here. It's kind of the point of this podcast. There's a reason that we do it. Most people, when they try to change their lives, start with goals. I want to make 100k a year. I want to get in shape. I want to start a business. But goals are short term. Goals change. What you need is a philosophy, a framework for making decisions, a guiding principle that keeps you from being pulled in 100 different directions every time the world changes around you. Instead of focusing on goals, start with values. What do you actually want to stand for? What kind of person do you want to be? What matters so much to you that it shapes every decision? Build your life around those things. Because if you don't, if you just chase goals without a deeper framework, you're setting yourself up for another trap. Step 5. Get comfortable with uncertainty. The thing that we don't often think about when it comes to real freedom is that it's unstable and it's uncomfortable. Because when you stop following someone else's script, you have to make things up as you go. That can be scary. But if you can sit with that discomfort, if you can embrace the fact that you don't have all the answers, that's when you finally start thinking for yourself. Now, generally we want certainty. We come into this world wanting a step-by-step guide to life. But the cold truth is that there isn't one. The people who think for themselves, the ones who reject the scripts, the ones who carve their own paths, those are the people who actually live. So if you feel lost, if you feel insecure, if you feel like you're standing on the edge of the unknown, then good. That means you're finally free. The final steps are to own it. No more excuses, no more waiting, no more looking to someone else for answers. You get one shot at this life, one. And if you waste it waiting to feel ready, waiting for permission, waiting for someone to show you the way, you'll die inside a different cage than the one you started in. If you want to be free, you own it. Decide for yourself, burn whatever doesn't fit, and build something new. We have arrived at the penultimate part of the podcast, the part where everything falls apart. Because when you start ripping out the foundation of your old life, when you start questioning everything you've been taught, letting go of identities, beliefs, relationships, habits, there's a moment where you feel like you're drowning, like you're free falling through nothing. No structure, no certainty, no familiar ground to stand on. And everything in you will scream to go back, to grab onto anything that feels stable. Even if that means retreating into old patterns, old versions of yourself, old illusions. Because the in-between, the bardo between destruction and rebirth, that is pure, unfiltered chaos. And that chaos is necessary. Because before you become something new, you have to survive the fire. Firstly, let's talk about understanding the death of the old self. Nobody tells you that growth feels like dying. Not just in some metaphorical, poetic way, it actually feels like a death. Your brain hates change. It's wired for survival, not transformation. And to your nervous system, the destruction of the old self is a threat. So it fights back. We get anxiety spikes, depression creeps in. We feel lost, unmoored, disconnected from reality. And we start questioning everything, our relationships, our purpose, our sense of identity. And if you don't know what's happening, you'll think something is wrong. You'll think you're broken, you'll think you made a mistake, but you didn't. This is exactly how it's supposed to feel. Because you can't just swap out belief systems like changing a light bulb. You're dismantling yourself at a core level. And that hurts. It's grief. Because no matter how toxic the old you was, no matter how much that old life was suffocating you, it was still yours. And now it's gone. So of course you feel empty. Of course you feel like you've lost something. You have. That's the price of evolution. You don't get to become something new without first mourning the old version of yourself. Then we have the fear of the void, which is potentially the most dangerous part, the part where most people fail. Because when you burn down the old structure, what's left? Nothing. And we're terrified of nothing. We'd rather stay in a bad relationship than be alone. We'd rather work a job we hate than have no job at all. We'd rather stick to a belief that's killing us than admit that we don't know what to believe. Because even if it's painful, at least it's familiar. And when you're staring into the abyss of your own mind, when you're in that blank, empty space before the new framework is built, you're going to want to go back. You're going to rationalize, make excuses, tell yourself that maybe it wasn't so bad before. That's the trap. That's how people spend their entire lives stuck in loops, because the void is scary. But if you can sit with it, if you can resist the urge to run, to numb, to grab onto something just to feel stable, then something incredible happens. The old wiring starts to break down. Your brain, desperate for structure, starts creating new connections, and slowly, the new self begins to form. But only if you've got the fortitude to stay in the void long enough for it to happen. And then we have the hero's journey. Every story of transformation follows the same pattern, and Joseph Campbell called it the hero's journey. You leave the old world, you enter the unknown, you suffer, you face yourself, you return reborn. And guess what? That suffering, that falling apart moment is where most people quit. Because they don't understand what's happening. They think it means they've failed, but it doesn't. It means you're in the process. Think about a caterpillar. That thing doesn't just grow wings, it melts. It turns into a pile of biological sludge before it rebuilds itself into something new. And that's what transformation really is. It's messy, it's violent, it's disorienting. But if you fight it, if you panic and try to force the process, you kill it before it can finish. So now you're here, in the chaos, in the destruction, in the freefall. How do you survive it? First, stop trying to control it. You can't logic your way through this. You can't shortcut it. You just have to go through it. You have to feel the grief. The old you is gone. Let yourself mourn. Let yourself feel all of it. You have to resist the urge to rebuild too soon. Don't grab onto another ideology, another identity, another distraction just to escape the discomfort. Let the blank space exist. And lastly, you have to understand that this is temporary. It feels like you're dying, but you're not. You're changing. And if you can sit with the chaos long enough, if you can let yourself be nothing for a while, then the real transformation begins. Here is my final piece. At some point, you're going to stop fearing the chaos. You're going to realize that every time your life collapses, every time things break down, every time you lose everything you thought you needed, that's when you become more you than you've ever been. Because the fire, the destruction, that's the proof that you're becoming something new. And when you stop fearing it, when you learn to welcome the burning, you'll finally be free. Because now, no matter what happens, no matter how much the world shakes around you, you'll know one thing for sure. You've burned before, and every time, you come back stronger. So here we are. The walls are gone. The old framework is dust. You've seen the prison for what it was, watched the chains dissolve the moment you stopped believing in them. You've walked through the fire, let the old self die, and now you're standing in the wreckage. And for the first time, there's nothing stopping you. No false gods, no inherited belief systems, no pre-packaged life paths waiting for you to slot yourself back in, just you. And the question you now have to answer is, what the fuck do I do with all this freedom? Most people spend their whole lives chasing freedom, but they don't actually want it. They want comfort, they want certainty, and they want someone to tell them what to do, even if it's disguised as wisdom or guidance or self-improvement. Real freedom means nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's handing you a checklist or a syllabus or a 5-step plan for happiness. It's just you, standing in the unknown, owning your choices, owning your time, and owning your mind. And for a lot of people, that's too much responsibility. They don't know what to do without a script, without someone else's blueprint, without the comforting walls of the cage they've lived in for years. But you burnt it down. And now you get to decide what comes next. If you're still waiting for some grand revelation, some aha moment where everything suddenly makes sense, forget it. There is no single answer. There is no one way to live. All you get is the choice to wake up every day and make something of it. To explore, to create, to fuck up and learn. To build without needing permission. And if that sounds overwhelming, good, that's the proof that you're finally free. The only rule is to don't build yourself another prison. You can do anything now, and that means you can also trap yourself all over again. You can trade one toxic belief for another. You can replace one rigid identity with a new one and call it growth. You can convince yourself you've changed when all you've really done is rearrange the bars of your cage. So before you start building, ask yourself, is this something I actually want, or is this just another illusion of safety? Because the last thing you want is to spend years climbing a ladder only to realize it was leaning up against the wrong wall. At some point, all of this, the questioning, the self-examination, the tearing down and rebuilding, it has to end. At some point, you have to stop thinking about life and actually live it. Because if you spend forever trying to figure it all out, trying to become your best self, trying to build the perfect mindset, then you're still stuck. So here is your last assignment. Go do something. Something weird, something reckless, something that makes you feel alive. Because you didn't do all this work just to become some perfectly optimized, neatly self-actualized version of yourself. You did it so you could be free. So go, be free, and don't look back. Thank you, you beautiful lot, for spending your time with me today. Your attention, your presence is always deeply appreciated. I want to say a huge thank you to all of you who have subscribed to the podcast so far, who've been on the Substack on the website and signed up for the updates. It's a huge help to us to get your support and your engagement, because it just makes this stuff more visible. And this is the wanky part that kind of contradicts everything that I'm talking about. It does grate me, but we have to do it because it's marketing, and to get this stuff out there so people hear this, I need to use these insidious platforms. So we are on social media. We're on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok with the handle @TheObservingEye. And there are video versions of these podcasts on YouTube, which is at youtube.com/@TheObservingEye as well. So if you like what you hear, go give us a subscribe, go share it with people who you think might find it interesting. And I do want to hear back from you as well. I don't want this to be like a broadcast. I'd love it to be a conversation. So there is space on all of those platforms for you to comment on things, to ask questions, and I will get back to you as soon as I can on those. I'd love to hear what you've got to say and what your thoughts are around this stuff. I've also set up an email, which I think I'm not sure if this is a good idea, but I've done it anyway. So you can also email me at david@theobservingeye.com if you want to, suggest ideas for things for me to talk about, if there's stuff that you think will be good or useful for people, or if you've got any questions about things that I've talked about in any of the podcasts, please feel free to drop me an email. I respond to them myself, and I try and do it within a day because, I'm not exactly swamped with emails. And that's it for this week. Go out into the world and be free. Take care, everybody. Much love, and I'll catch you soon.